Why is it that in the United States today, shock at how unprepared the country is to deal with the coronavirus pandemic is so often couched in comparison to the third world? In the words of one Seattle healthcare professional, we have third world countries who are better equipped than we are now. Why, regardless of the fact that third world terminology is outdated and confusing, do people continue to compare Donald Trump to a third world dictator and his handling of the crisis to a banana republic farce? What does this shocked comparison tell us about American exceptionalism? And why is it such a problem when dealing with a global pandemic? My name is Jeanne Morefield. I'm a senior lecturer in the Department of Political Science and International Studies at the University of Birmingham, and a non-residential fellow at the Quincy Institute for Responsible Statecraft in Washington, D.C. Many of my publications focus on the ideologies associated with imperialism, and that is the perspective that I bring to what is happening right now. Because this is like a third world as a response to COVID-19 betrays a real ignorance on the part of Americans about America's power in the world and the impact of that power on its domestic politics. The United States has over 800 military bases in about 70 nations, listening posts, black sites, aircraft carriers, a massive nuclear stockpile, and military personnel working in approximately 160 countries. This is a globe-spanning security apparatus built not for defense but for hegemony. America's global primacy emerged from the wreckage of World War II when the United States stepped into the shoes vacated by European empires to ensure that 300 years of imperial resource extraction and wealth distribution remained undisturbed despite decolonization. Since then, the United States has overthrown or attempted to overthrow the governments of approximately 50 countries, many of which, including Iran and Chile, had elected leaders willing to nationalize their natural resources and industries. In other words, America has played a large role over the years in ensuring that the third world stay third world. In terms of maintaining American hegemony, this requires spending more on defense than the next 7 largest countries combined. This is largely a bipartisan issue. At nearly $1 trillion, Trump's last security budget was passed with the overwhelming support of House Democrats. And yet, from the perspective of political discourse in America, this resource-draining behemoth exists in an entirely parallel universe from the one that most people occupy on an everyday level. Occasionally, Americans will wake up to the idea of this parallel universe, but only when the United States is involved in a visible military action. Thus, despite its impact and expense and size, the world's military hegemon exists somewhere on the periphery of most Americans' self-understanding. Why is this a problem in the midst of the coronavirus pandemic? Most obviously, America's massive security budget has gone so long without being questioned that one of the soundest courses of action for the United States during this crisis remains resolutely out of sight. In other words, the shock of discovering that the U.S. healthcare system is completely unprepared to deal with this crisis should automatically have triggered wider conversations about spending priorities that entail deep and sustained cuts to the security budget. Moreover, a country that is collectively engaged in unseeing its global power cannot fail to make critical connections between that power and the current situation. So, for instance, the outsized influence of American foreign policy is already causing the spread of coronavirus, as U.S. sanctions on Iran hamper that country's ability to respond to the virus at home and guarantee its spread throughout the region. Moreover, the fact that the President of the United States seems to resemble for many the self-serving authoritarian leader that U.S. forced on so many formerly colonized states is more than just a coincidence. Because the kinds of militarized policing that the American security apparatus experts exported to these authoritarian regimes contributed on a policy level to the rise of militarized policing in American cities and the rise of mass incarceration, Both of these racialized phenomena played a not insignificant role in radicalizing Trump's white nationalist base and decreasing their tolerance for democracy. Most importantly, because America is blind to its power abroad, it can't help but turn that blindness on itself. This means that even during a pandemic, when America's exceptionalism has profoundly negative consequences for the population, the idea of looking to the rest of the world for solution remains unthinkable. Bernie Sanders' reasonable suggestion that America, like Denmark, should nationalize its healthcare system is dismissed as a crazy pipe dream rather than the obvious solution to a human problem embraced by a substantial number of countries throughout the world, including the Third World. Over 150 years apart, political commentators Edmund Burke and Aimé Césaire use the exact same language to describe the blindness that accompanies imperialism as a gangrene that poisons the colonizing body politic. From their different historical perspectives, they argued that imperialism boomerangs back, causing irreversible damage to nations that consider themselves humane and enlightened, drawing them deeper into denial and self-delusion. Perhaps right now, there is a chance that COVID-19, an actual and not a metaphorical contagion, can have the opposite effect on America by opening our eyes and lifting the veil of exceptionalism. And as an American, I'm going to switch into the collective voice because this is my hope for my country. Perhaps the shock of recognizing the U.S. is less developed than our imagined third world might prompt Americans to tear our eyes away from ourselves and look to the actual world for examples of the kinds of political, economic, and social solidarity that are going to be necessary to fight the spread of coronavirus. And perhaps we can move beyond shock, incredulity, to genuine recognition and empathy with people whose economies and democracies have been decimated by American hegemony. And that might begin the process of reckoning with the cost of that hegemony, not just in the third world, but at home.